Alright, what's up, y'all? This is In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. Welcome. This is little Frank the guitar. I'm gonna make it real clear before I even get into this. I already filmed an episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast today. Episode 71 we did about a couple hours ago. Well, 3-4 hours ago, maybe, give or take. And it's titled, whatever it's titled. Yeah, anyway. Oh, gosh. If it comes to me, it comes to me. If not, it doesn't. But here's the thing. This is the second episode that we're filming today, and that's not so uncommon, really. I mean, I've done 2 episodes in a day, at least a couple times before, but I just want to make it very clear, I have no kind of intention out of my doing to make this right now, and I mentioned within episode 71 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, filmed on today's date as well, the 28th of February, 2025, that I didn't know I was going to be making it about, until about 10 minutes before I did, give or take. So, and that's how these usually are and usually work, is because I'm praying through it. I'm just being guided, being used as a vessel the way that I do, as much as I can. And so, I don't know for sure what's even going to be said in this. The title of this is Better at Times. This is episode 72 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. And I just got given that. I came over here and I sat down right here in the location that I filmed a lot of these episodes from this one back. There's been lots. I mean, probably 20, 30 episodes at least that I filmed right here in this location. And I just kept getting prompted to make a second episode today. And I haven't felt so settled. But like I have. It's been this weird, I feel so content, but I also feel like there's something that has to happen. And I didn't know what it was, and so I just sat here and that title came to my mind, and so I've got some things that I can talk about, but we'll see where it goes. Who knows? I mean, it's moments like that when things make the least sense that they're usually the most correct, the most impactful, the most supposed to be had, whatever it is. And so we'll just see what comes from this. I mean, this is not how the intros normally go, and not that it has to be a certain way ever. I mean, I change a lot as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, and the Image Clothing Company podcast could change a lot. But just meaning to me, this is unexpected, and I want to just make it very clear. I'm not trying to do this for any reason out of my doings, because I don't even really know what's happening, if I'm being real. But it's like I said, a mixture, and not even like some kind of mixture, but it's on both ends the same. It's equally content as much as I feel so strongly that I need to do something. But not out of like some urgency that I am afraid of. That's what I mean. It's this, it's actually a beautiful feeling, because I could have just sat here and done nothing if that's what was supposed to happen, but I guess now we're filming an episode, and this might be a 2, 3, 4 hour long podcast episode. And coming into it, I don't even really know why it's happening necessarily, right? And this title is something I didn't choose, but it just is something I just got spoken to sitting here. So cool, right? I mean, episode 71 was a hard-hitting episode to me personally. I'm seriously trying to think about what the title of it was, and I currently don't even remember, honestly. So, I mean, weird, right? I don't know if I'm just not supposed to be even saying it within this or what, but yeah, anyway, here's Frank the guitar. I guess we'll do some kind of little intro with Frank, and we'll go from there. But yeah. I adjusted Frank last night and I put, I don't even need to necessarily discuss or describe what I've done to him right now. Check out In the Image Clothing Company music, though, one of the 3/3 of our company, and you can see what I've done to Frank. He's got a custom radius, and it's been adjusted so many times, all done by me. Since I got him, he's just gone through so many phases, as we do as human beings, and I think that's a big reason why we have this here episode. Better at times, because sometimes we feel that way, and sometimes that's the case with certain things. Sometimes there's things that are better at certain times than others. Over a year ago, easily over a year ago, I was better at playing guitar in a lot of ways than I am now. But, I don't even know how to really word that, because not really, but kind of. Um, I mean, I don't know, dude. It almost makes me mad. I had Frank the guitar last night, dude, and I was so upset with him. Like I'm saying, doing these adjustments, but like I didn't want to. In a way that like it almost didn't feel right, but it felt so right. It's like what I was saying about how I'm entering this episode here. It's like this completely binding battle where both ends are equally correct. Like there's this absolute contentment, but like complete, like almost torment at the same time. And I've had that experience a lot with guitars, and I've discussed that, how I have, but that's just what happens a lot of time with the warfare that we experience, and I've noticed that, and a lot of what I discussed within episode 71 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, it happened a year ago, and then, into like a little over a year ago, kind of like a year and a half from this point back, between those times, and within that time, I was going through a lot, and it was a lot of really good stuff, and within it was like mixed with this feeling, like I'm saying, like a lot of just almost not even knowing how to put into words at all what's going on. And that's what happens, when the biggest things that are coming up and going on are going to be doing that. That's when a lot of times we feel so much warfare and confusion, and within the contentment, and it's this thing where we don't even know sometimes how to be, because it's such a strange feeling to feel so content but also feel so conflicted, because the ways that we would normally approach addressing those things are opposites. If you're content, then and a lot of times what that means is you can just sit there and not have to do anything. But when you feel so like conflicted and almost like there's something you need to do, then in those times what you would do is go get something done. And they're opposites, but that's why it's such a strange paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ, because that's how it is a lot of the time. A lot of the time is those type of feelings like I just described. And there's such a confusion to life sometimes when things are better at times. Uh, because what does that mean? Life's not a linear progression in any kind of way. And a lot of times we are better at certain things than we are as time progresses. There's times in my life where I was better at things than I could probably say that I am now. And that's not a bad thing. It's not like a stepping backward. It's just there's times and places for things. And I say that phrase all the time within In the Image Clothing Company podcast, times and places. There's some things that I say that like we shouldn't do or whatever, but then I'm also like, well, there's times and places, because living such a conditional life, just human beings, things change. We change, the world around us, as far as the man-made things and structures of how things are set up, change. And so sometimes you know, yeah, I mean, there's times and places to things, and so I don't know, it's weird. I mean, like I'm saying, I mean, just I feel very content, but pretty confused. So it was a hard hitting episode for me, man. That one we just filmed earlier, episode 71 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I mean, I'm seriously trying to think of what it's called, and I don't know if I'm not supposed to say the title within this or what. You know, I mean, it's weird, right? I mean, I feel entirely content about it, but everything feels so strange at the same time. Yeah, I think I'm supposed to actually remember what the title of that was, because it ended up being so different than I thought it was going to be going into it, but yeah, it's weird. And that's the thing too, is a lot of times when we start talking about things that have been such a big event in our lives, you know, I don't know, it gives me this feeling, you know, and I can't even remember the title of what that episode was. Seriously, I don't know right now. I have no idea as of right now. I'm trying to. And it's just how it is, and this is what I'm doing right now, is sitting here like this, and here we are. Episode 71 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Dude, I don't even know what the title of it was. I don't know why I don't know. It's like there's some kind of, that's what I mean. It's like I'm in this like weird, like in between type of feeling. So content, but so like, what in the world is going on? So, anyway, I mean, I'm gonna just take this as it comes, and we'll leave it as it goes, as I've said. But this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I'm gonna be doing some stuff to Frank the guitar as I'm talking, so cool. I mean, this is a very unconventional episode, as far as most all of them up until this point have been nothing like this. But here we are. So, In the Image Clothing Company has three sides to us, right? Our main physical goal, as far as we spread the gospel of Jesus Christ in everything that we do, but physically we address the human body's natural function. The goal is natural. The key word is always allow. We allow the human body to work, because everything within the body, being just a mechanical machine, only has the operations that it does, and it will only ever do those things and nothing else. And we can't get it to do anything. We can't change how its operations do work. So we address all the things that we do. This side here, 1/3, is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's the truth of all things. You don't have to believe me. I say that within everything that I do discuss. I'm just equal to you, human beings, sinful by nature. So you don't have to believe me, but we discuss things as they are. And yeah, we also have another third of our company, which is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where I discuss the anatomy of the human body, how to just allow the human body to work in our man-made society in 2025. As I said, right, it's the 28th of February, 2025. We talk about eating naturally, sleeping naturally, hydration, what it really means to keep the body hydrated, standing naturally, sitting naturally, walking naturally, pretty much all the things, though, that we do as a human being. And the reason we are a clothing company, right, the first three words in our name, In the Image Clothing Company, we're all universally designed by and in and through Jesus Christ. And so that's why we don't focus on the things that change, the fat content of the human being or the muscle mass of the human being. We focus on the skeletal system, because that doesn't change once we get full grown. It's just what it is. And it's our foundation, right? Within the gospel of Jesus Christ, we build our foundation on Christ himself. Within our human bodies, nothing else can come unless we have a foundation. All the musculature does of the body anyway is operate the skeletal system. So without that, there'd be no reason to have muscles at all, truly. I mean, that's the case. So the last two words in our name, though, clothing company, we're called that because clothing is the only thing that's placed physically on a human being. And so it's the only thing that has that high of potential to alter the body. The human body has a center line. There's no opinion, no dispute, no thought that you could have against that or whatever to change it. There's a brain that feeds the spine with a nervous system. You know, the brain stems in between the two things. There's the sternum in the front of our rib cage. There's the nose, and there's the trachea, all the things that are within the center of the body. There's two things opposing it, like the feet that have gripped arches that grip inward. There's two hands, two arms, two legs, right? All the things that there's two of on the opposing sides of the center line of the human being. We don't have a say over it. We can't decide it. We can't dispute it. It's just what it is. And so clothing's placed onto us, and in 2025 and past years, and just as long as human beings have ever been wearing clothing, which is since the very first one that there was, his name was Adam, right? We talk about that within the Holy Bible. Adam had skins that he wore from animals to cover his nakedness. That was the first sin that he made, is, well, I mean, partaking of the tree of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, and then he knew that he was naked. So human beings have always worn clothing since the first one. And even if it's, you know, even left to right, front to back, if it's oversized, it'll fall to the dominant side of the body and just, you know, pull the body away from its center line, imbalanced on one side versus the other, or just pull the shoulders lower than the only position they naturally would work in. And the shoulders do a lot more than just move the arms, but they allow for breathing and stabilization and balance and all the things, right? So the body just works as a whole, and clothing, if it's imbalanced in any way whatsoever, if it's unnatural, if anything is going on within it that's not allowing the body to do what it would do if it wasn't altered, then it's altering the body. If anything within the human body isn't working correct, something else. And many things have to compensate just to continue to operate on an earth with gravity pulling us straight down. So we talk about all those type of things on the main side of In The Image Clothing Company, and free modifications we show to how to keep clothing centered. And yeah, then we have In The Image Clothing Company Music. It's another third of our company, and that's where you'll hear Frank the guitar here. I'm gonna grab this tuner. It's just right over here, about 8 feet from me, so I'm gonna step over here, but it'll take me only that long because now it's currently in my hand. So I just took out the little shim that I had within Frank the guitar underneath the nut, and boy have I gone back and forth with this. I've had 19 guitars before I had Frank the guitar. He's my 20th, as I've mentioned within past episodes of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. And the reason I had so many was to learn all that I needed to understand how to allow the hands to work, which are essentially our shoulders, you know, when we're approaching playing guitars. The hands can affect the arches in our feet, right? I mentioned those just because that's basically the farthest away thing that you could mention, meaning as much as you want to debate what is, that pretty much would be the farthest away, right? The toes from the fingertips that are touching the strings of the guitar. But just the whole body gets altered if any part of it is. And so I've adjusted and set up countless guitars. I mean, we can count them because personally the ones that I have owned has been 20. That's how many I've owned. But yeah, so all that just to learn what it takes. And I've had Frank the guitar since December, and I'm still doing adjustments to him, and it's the date that I said. So this little shim that I had underneath the nut, I've taken in and out a few times. I made the shim. You know, it's been yeah, a whole thing. So I'm gonna tune Frank the guitar right here. Get some more tension on the strings before I have them start making sound, because there's no need to if there's no need to. But I will discuss more of what In The Image Clothing Company music is, because I've got a lot of knowledge and understanding about guitars, not only about playing them, but about the setups, about all sorts of things with guitars. I mean, anything you could really think of seriously without trying to sound like I'm so smart. It's just the case. I mean, I know a lot about guitars. It's come from a lot of experience, but yeah, with that being said, I show how to set up guitars just to do what we talked about, right? And I also make music on In The Image Clothing Company music, so you can check that out if you'd like on the main side. And here you are at the podcast, and so I'm gonna tune Frank up real quick. So yeah, I had to loosen the strings um a lot to get that little shim out, and I've done this throughout this episode. I'm saying it because some of you are watching in video plus audio, right? But In The Image Clothing Company podcast is available at audio only, or the way that I said first. So yes, I am tuning these strings from basically as if they had just about no tension on them. So. All right, so yes, Frank the guitar. These strings have been on and off. Shoot, I don't know. I mean, many times, well over 10, easily. So, I mean, it is what it is. And like I said, this is not an episode that I was planning to film. And I mean, that's just about always the case. But um, I want to make it very clear that whatever this ends up being, and episode 71 as well that I filmed today, it's not me doing it out of my own doings. It's kind of that whole thing, like you can't deny your own faith, you know. I mean, you're being prompted to do something regardless of what. I mean, if you're just, you know, I mean, you can't do anything else. I can't quite explain that to you, but if you know what I'm saying, then you definitely know what I'm saying. So I know a lot of people do. Yeah, so I'll talk about real quick, right? I mean, as we do in the intros, where clothing needs to sit on everybody. No opinion of mine, no opinion of In The Image Clothing Companies, but the human body's skeletal system, it only connects in the way that it does. It only works in the way that it does. It'll never do anything else. And each bone within the body is just it's connecting to another bone, and that joint will only have the range of motion and the functionality that it has. And so the pants we wear, if you're a man or woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any part of the earth, any time period, ever, the human body is just what it is. The pants have to be entirely above the hips, so they're not restricting the hips at all, sitting at that natural waist, as I worded in the last episode 71 of The Image Clothing Company podcast. And then the angle needs to be slightly higher in the front than in the rear. The core muscles of the human being would always naturally be activated unless something was altering them. So that's how we're going to allow them to stay that way. The tops that we wear, the seams on top of our shoulders need to be evenly behind the little bones that are at the tops of the edges of our shoulders. That's the other end of our collarbones, and that's how we keep our shoulders in their neutral position where they'd always naturally be unless altered. And ideally right at the very edges is where those edge seams of our shoulders sit, just because that's where the functionality of the shoulder joint is, and so that's going to allow it to just be what it is. Now, In the Image Clothing Company has two additional things that we talk about. We call them prerequisites because it's just something that has to happen if you're going to allow your body to be unaltered. The only way it's ever going to work. When we put shoelaces into our shoes, we're just weaving a rope on the top of our feet. The human foot is only shaped the way that it is. It's only ever going to work that way. The technique of shoelacing that In the Image Clothing Company uses, In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique, where you find In the Image Clothing Company anywhere on the internet, or anywhere you could find us at all, you'll find it somehow. Truly, I mean, you'll find it. Because that's our whole thing, right? Yeah. So shoelacing technique included with that is just to tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside on both feet to the center line of the body that is there. Otherwise, you're twisting your entire body from its foundation, and mostly just the right side of the body if you're tying right-handed knots, and mostly just the left side of the body from the shoelaces if you're tying left-handed knots. Over toward the center, over toward the inside of the human being. Now, secondly, we remove all tags. Tags are either causing a physical gap inside of clothing, or they're just not allowing the musculature to activate against them. Even within the shoes, all tags entirely removed. So, yeah, all that you can do. I mentioned, right, within the shoes, they're a little bit different. They're heat shrunk on. A lot of other tags you can easily cut out with a pair of scissors or a knife. But what I have done to these specific shoes here, my beautiful Denver Leather by Zero Shoes, Xero, no affiliation with them as of today's date or up until, but I love these. What I've done with these and other shoes as well is just put a lot of little slits into the tongue tag. I've also removed the tongue tabs, and we talked about that, if and where and all the places we do under In the Image Clothing Company. Those can alter the feet, but just texture within the tags. That's the point to it, right? Keeping those ankles neutral by letting them activate. And there we go. So the human body loves texture. It would always have it in nature, unless you were on something that you were trying to not be, like ice, right? So, cool. Yeah, this episode here, it's titled Better at Times. Because sometimes we are. I think I'm gonna probably, I mean, if I don't, then I don't, but probably play some more guitar throughout this episode. This little shim is something, dude, I don't know. I mean, I took this guitar and I love it. And shout out to Yamaha, no affiliation as of today's date or up until. But I love this and it's great. It's one of the cheaper monetary value-wise guitars by Yamaha. I've discussed what it is. But it's not how it needs to be from the factory. I've done things to it to make it custom, and right, just to allow it to accommodate for my ability to play the thing, which is the point of having one in the first place, if that's your intention. But it's weird because certain times, like I'm saying, I feel like I was quite a bit better at playing guitar. You know? And that's weird, man. And it's not a problem, though. I think that's the big thing of what I was saying coming into this, how it feels so strange, but so good. And it's like this absolute contrast, but entirely content on both ends. Because you can be really content with knowing you need to do something and just doing it, right? But you can also be totally content with not having anything to be done right now. And so it's like I'm feeling both ends of those things, but both of them I'm okay with. But also I don't know where is what and what is where and why I'm feeling it. It's really strange. So, yeah. But that's the thing is sometimes we are better at things at certain moments in our lives than we are at others as time progresses. And usually we hear that phrase, practice makes better. It's said differently, but we're not ever going to be perfect in this life. But usually when you practice something, you improve. But that's not always the case. And that's such a strange thing because that's the case, is that it's not always the case. Because, yeah, I mean, there's times in my life where I was way better at certain things than I would be now if I were to do them. But there's times and places. That's what I said earlier, because a lot of things need like a break taken from them. You know, because a lot of times when we're just doing all that we need to, right, trying our best to be used as a vessel and be open to promptings, there's certain things that our God needs us to do in certain times. And so, yeah, I mean, like a year ago, I was playing guitar a lot. I was writing a lot of songs. I was, in ways, definitely playing better than I can now. But it's not a problem in any way. In fact, it's on the other hand, it's a good thing that I'm not as good now as I was then. And I stopped playing for a while entirely. I got rid of all my guitars. You know, at certain times I had up to 6 guitars at once. And then I went a few months with none. And then, right? I mean, there's just been different moments where things have had to be what they've had to be. My living God, our ever present King of Kings, Jesus Christ, needs our attention in certain times to be in certain places, needs our intention to be in certain places at certain times. And others, he doesn't need us to do those things at all. But a lot of times, what will happen is we'll get like foreshadowing, if you want to use that word. If not, that's okay because I used it. But foreshadowing is like you get a little bit of understanding of something that's going to come later. Or you get shown a little bit of something that's not quite going to be fully in your grasp until later. And so it doesn't matter what the progression looks like of something like playing a guitar. But just knowing that I needed to start playing it when I got one, because I've explained my story. There's actually an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled I'm a Musician. And I discussed a lot of that. And, I just knew I needed to play when I first got one, and I didn't know why. But then also now it's been 2 years plus since I started playing, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, no, right around 2 years. And, I mean, there's times almost close to 2 years ago when I was at least as good as I am now. But that's not the point. As far as thinking that there needs to be some kind of linear progression, that's not the case. There doesn't need to be, because my attention has had to be in other places throughout the time period from starting playing until now for the reasons that it has. I found it in the Image Clothing Company. I went through a whole bunch of stuff I never could have expected, a lot of hardship, a lot of stripping of my past to uncover who I truly am, right? There's been a lot that's happened, but it was also right for me to start playing when I did. It's not like, well, I mean, if you're not really going to get much better in all that time, then you could have started like now instead of back then. Maybe, approached it different. And that's not the case, because the way I know it's not the case is the way that I know that this podcast episode is supposed to be filmed, meaning it's a very similar thing. It's not my choice. And it just happens how it does. And it doesn't make sense. And it just happens how it does. So, we're better at times with certain things, and we don't need to be down on ourselves, because that's what happens. We live in a modern 2025 currently, and going forward it's just only more so, right? Where there's a lot of expectations from people around us in the world. And a lot of times people think that if you start something, you should just get better at it and better at it and better at it. And if not, maybe try something else type of thing, I discussed something similar to that in one of these past episodes where, a lot of people, if they don't understand what you're really doing, um, you know, I love that line by Russ, the musician. You either see the vision or division. Which one is it? Is what he said. I word it like that. It kind of sounds a little bit off cadence, but it's because it was within a flow that was to a certain beat in his song. Just, part of one of the lines in one of his songs. But I love that. Hit me hard when I heard that years back, because people don't see what you're doing. Sometimes you don't fully know what you're doing, but you just know that it's going to be big, or like the steps to take as you're taking them. But other people are looking at it like, dude, I don't see what is happening. It's like building a puzzle. You've got all these pieces, and people can see, all right, there's something going on there and there, but how's this all going to come together? And you're like, well, I probably have a little bit better of an idea than you, but maybe I still don't quite know either, right? But I know when to put the pieces in when they're supposed to, right? And sometimes we have no idea what's coming up next, but we know what to do right now, you know? And yeah, so like buying my first guitar 2 years ago, or give or take. It was right around 2 years ago. Um, and it's funny because I keep talking about how I just, it's not me saying something. I don't care to say this. I don't care for recognition by any means in anything from another human being. I really don't. But I've said this and I keep saying it. It's one of those things like, I keep saying I'm going to be a really, really good guitarist. But then it's strange because you hear me pick through stuff right now, and some of it's not as fluent or flowy as it was a year and a half ago plus, in my own personal case. And so sometimes we're just better at things at certain moments than we are later. And okay, right? I mean, like I'm saying, and it's not because I'm saying something, but it's yeah, when things don't make sense, that's when they're good. Um, that's when they're right. That's when we're doing the correct things. Weird, I know, but that's something a lot of people don't understand, but it's the case. Even if you don't understand it as it's happening, you see it when it comes to fruition. And that's what I talk about, when I would speak on like the fruits of our labor and it comes later. You're not gonna plant some plants that are intended on growing fruit for you to eat and get the fruit right away. You put in the labor, and then later you have the fruit to show for the efforts you've put in. Um, it's things like that, and regardless of if that even really makes sense in the moment, like, well, I get what that means, but this doesn't look like that. Like, it's just all about obedience, and sometimes we're better at times. Better at being obedient in certain times in our lives than in others, and that's a big thing, man. Um and that really is, because sometimes we're better at like avoiding the sins that we might be getting caught up in at certain times than we are at other times. And we think we've like overcome it and we're never gonna sin again, and then we do, you know. Or we think we're so discerning we could never be deceived, and then we get deceived. We're so good at making sure that we're on the covenant path, within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like doing all the things that we're supposed to do, and then all of a sudden it's been 3 months, like we're just better at times, man. And what I was saying a few minutes ago is the thing to really hit clearly is a lot of times it's intentional and not on our part, but our God has things that he's setting in place in the times that he does things. And a lot of times things are being placed for us that we don't even know about yet. But like something that's supposed to be happening as far as people coming together, like a marriage or like a business partnership or like a location to live or move to, or something that you're going to be involved in, but it hasn't even like been invented yet, like, right? There's certain things that could seem like delays to us, but they're intentional, quote unquote, delays by our God. As far as like, maybe I wasn't supposed to be linearly progressing in guitar from the very starting of when I started playing at all until now for some kind of certain reason, um, that like I do or don't understand, and maybe to a certain degree or not at all, right? At this current time. It's stuff like that. We're better at times with certain things and for certain reasons that maybe we don't know in that moment. And maybe we won't even fully understand ever. But, we're being used in the ways that we need to. When I say ever, I mean in this life, Um, the whole point's having faith and just knowing that we don't need to compare ourselves to our past selves or what we think we should be by now or whatever, right? I mean, because we don't. And so, yeah. that's one of those things for me, man, is I'm thinking back to moments of playing guitar, videos I filmed, and I've deleted pretty much everything, um, from those times. But I just remember like playing well, and now I'm like, huh. In certain ways, I'm not quite as fluent in certain things when it comes to guitar right now, but that's what I mean is I can feel that it's not something that I'm doing wrong. Like I could be better if I did blank, but it's what I'm saying. There's an intentional delay. And that's a big part of it. If I would have just put so much time into guitars, I wouldn't have had time to found in the Image Clothing Company in this time. See what I mean? Better at times, meaning we're human beings, and time to us seems like this big scary thing that, oh, we missed it. And to our God, he's like, what? He's outside of time. I'm gonna grab Frank. I mean, he's just right here. I'm gonna put him in my lap. I'm gonna check the tuning just because it falls out of tune normally a little bit. Once you pull the strings to their tension, they have to like relax into their new stretched position. So give me just as long as it takes, and I'm gonna run through the strings. There's a decent amount of what we call fret buzz on that G and that B, but a lot of that's just my guitar right now. Meaning it's one of those things, again, it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, who knows? I mean, there's reasons for things at the times that there's reasons for things. So I think a big thing is just being okay with it. Because the whole point of this life is having faith in Jesus Christ. As I've said, don't believe me, don't take my word for it, but as I say all the time, there's no place to get to in this life. Because once you think you've gotten there, you'll find something else you think you got to get to. The whole point of this life is getting closer to Jesus Christ. And that doesn't look the same for everybody, and that doesn't look the same for you specifically yesterday as it might tomorrow, or at age 15 as it might at age 35. That's what I mean is sometimes we feel like we're better at times in all the ways that we could. But yeah, again, just making it really clear, it's just time. I mean, we put a lot of importance on time, and we don't really need to, because almost every case, the more importance we put on time, the less we feel we have. We feel like we're running out of time. And the less that we really think about time in the moments that has happened, in your case, if there are some that you can think about, try to really, if you can, because this is a beautiful thing to see. In those moments, it's when we're actually content. Because when you're always thinking about time and how, well, I mean, and comparing times too, right? Comparing like the past to now or whatever, or worrying about in the future you're going to not have as much whatever as, you know what I mean? If you don't hurry and stockpile things now, stuff like that, we're just better at times. Times are better for us at different times. As far as things are easier at certain times in our lives, than other times. But even stuff like that, it's not like it's just only because of our doings, you know. It's not like, man, life used to flow so much smoother than it seems to today. What am I doing wrong? It's not really like a valid question to even ask yourself because of this reason. You know, our God uses things because trials will come up for reasons. And so if it seems like things are hitting you hard, a lot of times it's because you're getting ready for something big to unfold in your life that's not your choice or your doings, but our God places things the ways that He does in His perfect, all knowing doings. So, yeah, right? I mean, I feel really convicted to really, really, really be very clear to say that I'm going to be a very good guitarist. I do not care for the recognition. But it's like how I've said since, you know, early on at least, but pretty close to like the very start of In the Image Clothing Company, that it's going to be huge. All three sides of it, just what it is, what we do here. Not for the recognition, but just because it is going to be. It's not me saying something, like I'm saying. I didn't choose to sit here and film this episode 72 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Better at Times. I'm just sitting here. I didn't choose to not even remember what episode 71 was titled. I still can't remember it. I want to, but I feel like I shouldn't. And I'm content with that. It just doesn't make sense. So, you know, sometimes we're just better at times, better at being obedient, man. My whole life is just centered around obedience. I'm just so sick of myself in a lot of times. You know, like I have a higher standard for myself than I could reach. And I don't think that's an uncommon thing by any means for human beings to have. But it's not something we need to do, you know? Um, but a lot of times I feel like I'm not doing enough for the sake of God. I don't care what anyone cares about or asks of me or wants for me to do or expects from me. I couldn't care less. Um, I shove that in your face if you try to get me to do something that you think I want to do. I do not care. But in all aspects of every ounce of what I could be, I want to be obedient to God. And I've got a high expectation for what that means, and probably higher than He expects from me. Yeah. So, you know, better at times, better at being compassionate with myself at times, better at being accepting of the fact that I'm messing up at certain times than at others. You know, better at being faithful at times than others when things seem to be making some sense because it's similar to what I've experienced in the past. And so I know what the potential outcome is, but then, you know, and other times it's different. Like, it's annoying, dude. I mean, it's annoying being a human being. You know, shout out to Cody Johnson, the country singer. He's got a song titled Human, and he says he's just learning to be human. I mean, tell me about it, dude. I mean, that's all we're going to be doing this whole time and this whole life. Yeah, you know, that's why it is what it is. You're never gonna get somewhere. You're never gonna make it. I mean, because you think you do until something gets worse than it was at another time, and you say that phrase. Better at times, you know, it was better back then, you think, but in what ways? I mean, who decides that? God decides. So, right? Can we get over ourselves a little bit? Can I get over myself? And, you know, I'm feeling today like, shoot, man, I feel like, well, I was pacing around earlier. I do a lot of pacing, just walking in the house. And, where, you know, where I currently live, and always, and I've mentioned that in the Image Clothing Company content, because I do a lot of walking. You know, I talk about how we don't need to exercise, but I do a lot of walking, just because that's like naturally just what I do. It's just how I process things and think. And I'm very, very intellectual, so I'm thinking a lot. Trying not to overthink, right? But I'm better at times. But anyway, I was pacing earlier. That's awesome, because that's the case, yeah, right? As far as we can think that. I used to be so much better at not overthinking than I am right now. Well, maybe there's a reason for it. Just hold on a little bit, have some faith. But that's what I'm saying. I was walking around earlier and I was thinking about, well, I was saying, like through prayer, you know, just talking to Christ, I was saying, I kind of feel like a year ago. Feel like I was in this exact state of being last year. And that doesn't make any sense Because yesterday I felt like, holy cow, we've got a whole company with 70 episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. And then now today, I don't know what's going on. I felt like I was better back then. I was walking around saying this through prayer, you know. Right? I mean, who's to say? Who's to say? Who's to say? It's not us, and it is God. So there's your answer, Evan, right? So sit down and film episode 72 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Show everybody on the other end of this, if there is anybody, that it's as real as it is, you know, because that's the case. You know, I mean, adjust Frank the guitar however many times you have, and maybe more, and don't ever get sick of it, because if you feel like you're better at times, well, cool, there's some kind of reason to it. You just might not know it right now, right? And then I start questioning, you know, like, well, shoot, well, then what am I doing wrong, you know? Because even though I know it's not always supposed to feel good, and I don't have the desire to always feel good, I almost, you know, feel like something should be different, you know? And so then it's like racking my brain. All right, what am I doing wrong? You know, praying a million questions. What can I do? I'm asking all these things, but then I don't give myself time to receive an answer. And that in itself, now I'm thinking, I was better at times and waiting to receive an answer. And so can I ask this in a better way, you know? But then it's like, I'm not waiting still. And it's stuff like that, you know? But it's always when things, not always, but yeah, actually pretty well always, close to it at least, when things are going really good, when things kind of seem like they're the scariest or the hardest, or like maybe you haven't quite done things as well as you should have by now, or even did in the past, right? Like you feel like you're doing it better at times. Uh, well, who's to say, right? And so that's why I was wording it the way that I was, because that's how it is. It's like I'm entirely content on both ends. Like, I feel like there's nothing I need to do, and I need to just sit and just let this be what it is, and just understand it in the ways that I do, or not even address it and just kind of be right here without even trying to figure out what's going on. But then I'm entirely content with feeling like there's something to do, even though I don't know what that thing is, and that doesn't make me content. Like, but I'm calm about it all, as much as it's like a really confusing, like almost tormenting thing. That's really how it is. And so, as real as it gets, right? I mean, in the Image Clothing Company podcast, this is what we do. It's raw, it's real. I'm hanging out, taking a shim out from underneath the nut of Frank the guitar during this intentionally. Not because I could have done this before, but no, I was supposed to do it in this. This is part of the discussion. This is part of the gospel preaching that I do when it comes to In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Yeah, you know, and so there's just a lot of unknowns for sure, man, as far as like, you know, anything, because that's the whole point. Is a lot of times we feel like, well, I'm doing things and I can tell the ball's kind of rolling, if you will, and things are going in ways that seem right. And so, you know, and so what? Because then I stopped. I felt like I was gonna have more to say, but then now saying that phrase right there, and that like wording, it puts me on the end of just being content. It's like, well, yeah, things are, because a lot of things that I used to do everything based off of feeling, is what I'm trying to say, and we're not supposed to. So, you know, cool. I don't know. I'm grabbing the guitar again, not because I don't know what else to say, but because I was trying to say something else, and like avoid grabbing the guitar when I was being prompted to. Close enough, right? I mean, sure. But I mean, I used to like. I used to shred guitars, bro, and now I feel like I can't. I don't know what's wrong. But this is the thing, is I know that my stringing technique isn't wrong. slash just setup, right? On In the Image Clothing Company music, where I have the video titled full nylon string guitar setup, I know that what I'm doing right now is correct. But here's the other thing is, as I was mentioning in the last episode 71 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, that I still currently don't know the title of. As of right now, I do not. And that's strange to me because I don't like expect myself to have the perfect memory, but I usually am pretty good about remembering the episode titles, at least the past few, and I reference them in the ones that I'm currently making. And I made that like within probably 4 or 5 hours back from now. So it's strange, very weird. And there's some kind of intentionality to that. That's not mine, right? It's weird. I don't know. But I was talking about something, and so who cares? I don't know, right? I mean, this is what I mean. This is how real it is. And it's not like I just, want to make an episode, but I don't feel like it. I didn't plan on this, and I feel like I'm supposed to, regardless of how I feel. Oh, there we go. That's what I was talking about. Is, going off of feelings in my past. We're not supposed to, because a lot of times we feel so uncomfortable thinking about doing something we're prompted to do, but we're just supposed to do it. And so if we don't feel so good about it, well, don't focus on how you feel. I'm sure it was pretty uncomfortable trying to lead Israelites across a large river. It's like I can't even think right now, dude. Anyway, Moses parted the Red Sea, right? He didn't know going into it what he was going to do, but he just knew he was supposed to get across that water somehow, right? And it just happened. A way was made, but he just, had to be faithful. So, anyway, yeah, there were times in the past times that I've been playing guitar throughout my life where I was shredding, dude, with other guitars. Even with Frank, I feel like there's moments since I've had him that I could play better than I can now. But it's like I'm not torn up on it, and I'm not trying to make it be something else. It's like it's the title of this episode here, episode 72 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I mean, we're just better at times for reasons that we might just not quite know. And so, it is weird. I mean, I was like shockingly good at certain times with guitar, and it's not like an out of practice type of thing. And it's not like, well, that's what I was saying, is it's nothing to do with the setup. This is correct. And that's not me saying something. That's not me worrying about being wrong. And I'm going to get into this. I'm going to further this. But it's not like just because I've said it in so many episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and they're numbered, and they're just what they are and never going to change. And it's not just because I've been telling other people that it's all correct, so now I don't want to be wrong. But it's last night, sitting right over there, about 10 feet from this current location that I'm sitting in, and, doing adjustments to Frank. And just knowing that no matter what, I couldn't even try to go back on, like, am I right? Am I wrong? Does it matter? I mean, I don't even care how many times I've said it within the podcast. I'll own up to it if I'm wrong about it. But I was sitting there last night like, no, I can't. I mean, I can't even begin to think that way because that's just not the case. It's this whole battle against myself because of, what I'm saying. It's like completely content, but also just so like uncomfortable about it and confused. It doesn't make sense to me at all. Some things, in times of my life, dude, but that, I mean, that's where I am right now. I mean, I get pretty upset with guitars, and think what you want of me, but I've definitely broken guitars, like intentionally. Just put my foot through them and certain things. I mean, like because of this reason, not just because I got some kind of anger issues and whatever, but if I do in the ways that I do, then cool. All right, I'm not trying to like avoid that either, like owning up to it. I just mean for the sake of with guitars, it's like what I'm saying within when we're doing the right things that we're supposed to be doing and we're like so close to it as it is or whatever, that's when things just feel so strange and weird, and we get attacked, dude, as far as like warfare, confusion comes up, potentially procrastination or delays or extra challenges just to really kind of like push us to that level that we need to be before the blessing then comes so that we're able to receive it. And so last night, dude, I was honestly a little bit wondering if I was gonna even have this guitar to play after last night. I didn't know. I felt like it might be the better thing to just break it, and so I don't have to deal with it anymore. And that's what I've done in the past, right? But then, like I said, that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, I referenced I'm a musician, and in a lot of ways I've talked about this. I've tried to give music up, and I just couldn't. Just like I tried to leave the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I did, but I'm back. Like you just can't leave some things, but it gives you this weird like feeling. Sometimes it feels better at times. Sometimes you're within the church and you feel like you felt the Spirit so much stronger in your past, and so either this must not be actually true, you're thinking to yourself, or like I'm not doing enough, and if so, then which one is it? And holy cow! And then it puts me, in my case, this is how I feel, in that experience that I'm mentioning. I feel right now, like totally content with, all right, I guess this is just what it is, but also, shoot, is there something I need to change? And if so, I'm fine with it. I just want to be able to know for sure what it is so that I make sure and do it. Like this complete bind, but like contentment on both ends of that. As I've been discussing through this, it's just so strange. I feel this a lot, dude. Um, and that's what it is, right? I mean, it's warfare. It's like a test of faith. It's on the one end, it's, can you be content doing absolutely nothing right now, even though there's a lot of things that you could be doing, a lot of things that people are telling you could do, people are asking you to do, a lot of things that you might think could better your situation. If I'm asking you, like our God speaking to us, and me, I'm speaking out of personal experience. I've felt this, it's like if I'm asking you to sit there and just not do anything right now, even though there seems like so many things you could do to what you think is better your situation, will you be obedient and just sit there and do nothing? And then on the other hand, it's like, I know you don't really want to do much of anything right now, but I'm asking you to do something. Are you going to do it regardless of if you feel scared about it or not? And so it's navigating those things and just trying your best to be obedient, right? This is me speaking out of my experience. And I know that other people have had these experiences. I've had conversations with people where they've said similar things. So yeah, I mean, right? It's just, it is what it is kind of thing, and then you start getting questioning potentially, right? Last night I'm like, well, that's what I was saying, it's like I'm fine owning up to it if it really is the case that I'm wrong about the guitar stringing technique and setups that I say that has to be what it is. I'm content being wrong about it, but how much of it is just me questioning myself because I'm going through some adjustments, my physical body. It's that's something that I talk about. I mean, again, physically, in the Image Clothing Company addresses the human body's natural function, and so it's what I said when I started to say just there. That's something I talk about so often. I can't make you believe it that my body's changing physically because you can see it. I mean, right. Even if you didn't check out the other two sides of the company, you're already here on In the Image Clothing Company podcast. If you're an audio only, go to where this is placed in visual as well as audio and just look at like even the thumbnails, like the little photographs that are showing you what the video is about or whatever, or open it up and check out. It doesn't even matter, dude. I feel like I'm over explaining this. The point being, I couldn't even make it something it isn't. You can visually see, no matter who you are, if you knew me beforehand or not, there's documentation through video of my physical body's position because of the things that we discuss under In the Image Clothing Company. That's how I can say so boldly, these are universal, unchanging, undisputed truths that do apply to every human to ever live, and they are. And so a lot of that too, you go decades, potentially with your hand working in a certain position. And then now that you've gotten it out of that chronic imbalanced patterning, you're doing these little fine motor skills with the guitar. And so now things are feeling different and you're questioning if it's your stringing technique versus if it's just that your body's not used to doing those things yet, And then there's that other part of it where a lot of times we get so upset when things are so good because we get used to things being hard. So then when things are going good, it's like, man, am I doing something wrong? It's like you're expecting something bad to happen. And if things are going so good, then that you almost make that be the bad thing as far as like, oh, I shouldn't feel this content or whatever, you know? So that's part of it too, you know, sometimes I start thinking those kind of things. You know, I'm just as human as everybody else, dude. I mean, I don't know what anybody thinks about me, anybody that does know In the Image Clothing Company, or even just me in general in any kind of way. But whatever you do think about me on any end of, you know, you think highly of me, you think like I'm less than you think that I'm smarter, you think that I just have opinions that I'm trying to preach, or you know what I mean, whatever end, it doesn't matter. The point is I'm just as human as everybody else, like Cody Johnson says. Truly, man. And I will be at 95 years old when I'm so much more wise than I already am, right? I mean, I just mean it. Like, so sometimes we feel better at times, you know? I mean, yeah. I think the big thing is we can't get used to it. We talk about change so often, you know, and change is the only constant. That's something people say all the time, you know. Within the human being's nature, that's the case. I mean, there's always just change going on, dude. And so we can't get used to things as they are, because then if they change, then we sometimes potentially think that we did something wrong when we didn't. But we just got to be able to be open to not always feeling the way that we maybe think we should if we're doing the right thing. Because sometimes doing the right thing, universally actually the correct thing, like truly right, not just like paving your way to hell with good intentions, but like actually the right thing. In those moments, a lot of times, we sure don't feel so good about it. It doesn't resonate with us. It doesn't feel comfortable, but it really is the right thing to do, you know? So golly, right? I mean, anyway, Frank the guitar, dude. And it's like I don't even know what to do. It's like sometimes I feel like I don't even know, I can't even talk. Dude, it makes me want to I want to throw the guitar. I mean, I'm just being transparent. I'm filming this. I understand that I sound like I'm out of control. I'm not out of control. It's just I'm upset, dude, about it. I'm upset, and I don't know why. Because of the reason I was just mentioning a minute ago, sometimes we just feel so upset when people do things for us that we feel that we don't deserve. You know, it's like, how could you do that for me? Don't do it. You're making me mad about how kind you are to me, kind of thing, you know? And so when I get blessed, by God, a lot of times I'm like mad about it because I know I don't deserve it, regardless of how righteous I am, right? Or how unrighteous I am in whatever moment we could ever try to talk about. I know that no matter what, in this human condition, I will never be worthy of receiving anything that God gives me, but he's perfect. And so, you know, that's the whole thing, is a lot of it is, like I'm saying, I don't know how much of it is that it actually feels so good when we're talking about like the guitar right here. And it's just that I don't want it to, because I'm used to the struggle, right? Taking guitars apart and putting them back together again and again and again and again, versus how much of it is, who knows, right? Me just needing to be able to deal with something for a day or 4 weeks or whatever it is, because maybe it's just not quite time for something and he just wants me to hold out, you know, instead of scrambling to try to find something to fix something. Talked about that a little bit in the past episode, man. Episode 71 of the Image Clothing Company podcast. I still don't know the title too, as of right now. But I talked about, you know, people going into their junk drawers sometimes and they're like just rummaging through it to try to find an answer to something, you know? When really, a lot of times, just back to this episode now, right? But I mentioned that over there. But a lot of times we're just actually being commanded to just kind of sit and be patient. Even when things don't make sense, even when there might be things that we could do, whether they're going to help us or we just think they might, but just there's options of something, and it seems to actually make sense to us. He doesn't want us to do those in certain moments. He wants us to just sit content. And that's the hardest thing. Anybody can do anything, but it's not doing stuff that's really hard for people, right? I mentioned that, you know, anybody can be a billionaire, but it's not so common for people to be content with, you know, very little to no money. That's the case, you know, it's on those kind of ends. Anyone can gain anything in his life, truly. Whether you're just pretty capable and you can actually do it, or if you manipulate other people and use them to do it for you, anybody can. But not very many people can be content with not having the things that they think they want or need. And so patience is kind of like that, you know. Sometimes we feel like we're better at times being patient. And then other times we feel like, man, I thought I kind of overcame this whole thing about being so impatient, you know, and I worked on my patience and I prayed through it and I asked for some, strength to help me, slow down a bit. And then something comes up and all of a sudden you feel like you're going 1,000 miles an hour faster than your own feet can take you, and so, I mean, it just happens, dude. I mean, we feel like we're better at times than we are at others, but maybe we are. But maybe we're supposed to be. To learn something, to kind of like give a little bit of what I was mentioning earlier, like almost a quote unquote intentional delay for things to maybe be like set in place for you or whatever, Um, and in and through it all, it's we're learning. It's just all a learning process. None of it really matters if we can see that as it is. Truly, it doesn't. Like I said, I mean, it's just about getting closer to Christ, and that can look however it looks, because depending on where you're placed at the beginning of your lifetime on this earth, right? $100 could be like a billion, I mean, just meaning a lot of people chase money, but depending on where you at, depending on where you at, dog, you know what I'm saying? Depending on where you're at on the globe, some people just about never earn any money, and some people literally never do, but live a full 80, 90-year lifespan content. And then other people are billionaires and they're miserable, right? So sometimes you feel like you're better at times at just being content with what you have and where you are. And then, sometimes you feel like you got to be doing more than you could ever even actually do. So we're just better at times, uh, but who's to say, I mean, is it really better? Or is it just that, like we talk about, there's times and places for things. Our God uses the thing that we're dictated by, being time, to do what he needs to with us because he's outside of it. And so it doesn't matter to him. And that's really how it is, dude. So get over yourself, Evan. It's me talking to myself right there, but anybody else can, take that as well and say that to yourself, really, too, because, I mean, no matter what, no matter what. So, yeah, dude. But what I was saying, I kind of put Frank in my lap right there a few minutes ago, and I was going to maybe start picking through something again. And I said, I feel like I want to throw the guitar. Not out of like some kind of anger management issues, but just like, it's this bind. It's this like, am I just not supposed to touch it right now? Like how I got rid of all my guitars for a certain amount of months, And that was intentional because I learned things and I did other things and progressed in other ways. Or what is it really, I mean, it really is that kind of thing, just as real as it is, as I say, right? I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't know. And I don't care. I just care to be obedient. Like, sometimes we just feel like we're better at doing that in certain times, though. But sometimes we're misreading it, because we're thinking like, I used to be so much better at blank, when really that's not the case. Because as I'm saying, I feel like there's times in my past when I was better at guitar, but maybe that's not true. Maybe it's just that I was kind of approaching it differently, playing things a little bit differently, and it just kind of seems different, and the perception's the thing that I'm seeing. Because maybe I really am better now than I ever have been at guitar, specifically. Maybe. And who knows? And who cares is the whole point. It's so strange, man. I mean, life's just such a weird thing, dude. I mean, it's like I'm always looking in the mirror when I'm saying stuff. When I'm talking about life, it's like I'm looking in the mirror and speaking to that kid who's Evan Strong, right? Replace life with me. It's like I'm such a strange thing. Because really what life is us. I mean, there's no life to experience if you're not here. Otherwise, who's to say, right? Truly, I mean, that's the thing. So when we're looking at life and thinking it's so weird, it's like really we're just talking about our own being. So that's why I call it, the human condition, you know. Yeah. A lot of people do, it's not like something that I came up with, but that's why we talk about it that way. It's just human beings are just what they are, dude. And they have this back and forth battle that they do, and you know, it's hard for us to be patient. Some people are pretty darn patient, dude, and that's a trait, man, that I don't so much have. We can work on whatever, but I mean, for everybody, what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. It's hard for everybody to be patient, even those people who are pretty patient. Um, but when we look at things in the grand scheme of eternal life, and like President Russell M. Nelson within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says, he says thinking celestial. I mean, basically just meaning like thinking like our God does, and understanding that the things that we can put importance on aren't big at all. I mean, even if it's like $20,000 and you've never made more than 10, or even if it's like, I think or thought this person might be my husband, and you end up never speaking to him again or something, right? Even if it's something that seems so big to us, it's like, to our God, he's like, no, just I don't want to make it some kind of like silly voicing, but in all seriousness, he's like, no, just calm down. Like, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Just rest. Just relax. Just chill. No matter what, I'm above everything, and I'm literally above you, watching you. As far as like he sees everything that's going on, and so just calm down. Like, you really are okay. I mean, uh, yeah. I mean, I talk a lot of times about how less is more, but he our God tells us that, man. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if you're accomplishing all the things that you think you should, or if whatever, right? He doesn't. He just wants you to come to him. And so that looks how it looks in our own situations. Dude, this is happening in the last episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast as well. Episode 71. I was like getting to the point where I couldn't even talk. And it was like this absolute contentment. That's what I mean. It's like, all right, cool, I'm doing good stuff, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if nobody else thinks so, even if I almost break the guitar that I mention so often how grateful I am for, and then even if that were to happen, if I was like totally calm the second after I did it, or if I'm going to break it and I decide not to, and I'm just calm either way, because that's the thing, it's not like I'm just like raging and got some kind of crazy emotions that I can't control, but it's just like, things ramp up, dude. We experience stuff when things are important, even if they don't seem like it to us, like these intentional delays. I've been putting the quote unquote around that because we don't like the word delay as human beings, but that's why I word it the way that I do, because our God does things very intentionally. And again, he doesn't care about time. And so when I say better at times, well, to him, there is no such thing, as far as it doesn't matter to him what we think time is. And so he'll intentionally kind of, lay things out. And that's how he'd be wording it, It's not like, it's not like time really matters. And we get caught up on it, man. We really do, because we've only got about 80 years, give or take. But who cares? Truly, who cares? I mean, what about the kid who died at age 8? Is he going to be all worried about the next 72? Holy cow. I didn't mean that. You know what else though, man? I'm gonna further this, but I'm gonna say very clearly, I did not mean to say that. As far as I didn't mean for those numbers to be what they are. And let me kind of expound on this. Within Strong's Concordance, the number 8 is father, right? Within like Hebrew, however it works. I don't know how to even fully word it or explain it as of yet. And I've talked about numbers in the past episodes of the Image Clothing Company podcast, and I don't know how to fully word it, but I know when conviction hits. And number 8 means father. And we're on number 72 as far as the amount of episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. that we've had. And I said 80 years. And the number 8 is also the age of accountability within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Children don't get baptized before they turn 8 because, as it says within Scripture, we need to humble ourselves and become as little children and have the innocence of a child, to be able to enter the kingdom of heaven. And children are alive in Christ, is how it's worded within the Book of Mormon, And so they're not even at an age where they need to be held accountable until they get indoctrinated into the world, right? And so the age of 8 is what we are held accountable at, and before then it's, we're just kids. And so I just didn't mean to do any of that kind of, this is what I mean, right? I didn't know I was going to be sitting down to film this, and now here we are. This is what it means to be obedient to Christ. 8, Abba, Father. The perfect Father. Anyway, well, I guess if you didn't fully understand why I picked that all apart so much and why that was so shocking, because it is because 72, this episode, plus 8 is 80. And yeah, right? So go back and listen to that again if you'd like to, if you didn't fully understand what just happened. But I didn't intend for that to be anything out of my doings. And so some things just happen, dude. Sometimes some things just happen, dude. Dude, I mean, it's strange. I mean, a lot of times we get so many things placed into our lives, but only to see if we can get rid of them. And I've experienced that quite a few times. Because, you get everything you ever wanted, but will you give it up? If you're asked to, by God. And the answer for me is yes. And I don't gotta try to convince anybody of that. You don't gotta care. But I can tell you that it has happened multiple times. There are times when I got everything that I thought I wanted, and then I just threw it away because I was prompted to. And both ends were correct, as in it was intentional for me to want it and receive it, and then it was also intentional for me to be asked to just throw it away, and I did. And I was grateful and joyful in all those moments of that whole journey of whatever that thing was in my life. That's happened multiple times, especially within the past couple years. So here we have Frank the guitar in my lap, and I don't even want to touch the strings. But I'm saying still that I'm going to be a really, really good guitar player as time does its thing, whatever that even means, right? So I don't know, dude. I don't know. We can't compare ourselves, dude, because we're always just going to be better at times, and whether that time is down the road or if it seems like it's back, right? I mean, it doesn't even matter, dude, so I don't even care. I don't know. I mean, it's like I don't even know how to touch this thing, dude. I want to play it, and it's like I can't even get myself to put my fingers onto the strings. And that's how it was a lot of the time with the guitars that I had, and that's the feeling that I had when I broke guitars. It's not just because I was doing it out of rage. It was this spiritual battle, and so yeah. I mean, what else is there to say, dude? I mean, sometimes we're just better at things at times. So cool. So cool, dude. I don't know. I don't care. I mean it, but also it's what else are you gonna do? I mean, the faith is in the waiting. I mean, yeah. I think a lot of times we're not waiting as long as we feel like we're waiting. You know, it's like someone says they're going to come back in a half hour and you're sitting there and you're just like, okay, fine, I'll wait. And then some time goes by and you're like, man, they're really not back. And then they show up and you didn't know how long it had been. It's like, I thought you said a half hour. It's been so long. And they're like, it's been 25 minutes. I'm early. Right? That's how it works with like our blessings, with, waiting on God. A lot of times we feel like it's been so long and it's not been. We're just impatient, and we don't know the outcome. And so we're a little bit scared and worried about it. And then we're also thinking like, well, leading up to this, is there anything I could have done to make this more efficient or whatever. And the answer is pretty much always no. Anytime we're questioning things, just no, right? Because we're trying to find the answers, and we get, well, like I'm saying with the intentional delays, sometimes we get intentionally withheld from understandings for the sake of us having to have faith, right? That happens, dude. And sometimes we're a little bit better at times at being content with not knowing than we are at others. And then, moments come up and we just want to know. We're pretty mad about it, It's like, wish I knew, you know? Would it really hurt something if you just told me now, right? It's like waiting for Christmas presents, seriously, It's like 3 days before Christmas and there's presents under the tree, right? I mean, just hypothetical, but this is seriously, how it is. And Christmas, again, it's again, meaning I've talked about Christmas a decent amount of times throughout In the Image Clothing Company podcast, because it's not a holiday, it's a celebration of the birth of our God. And so, yeah, Christmas is a beautiful example to use for this, It's like, well, if you're going to give it to me anyway, do I really have to wait till Christmas? I know it's 3 or 4 days away, whatever it is in the hypothetical, but it's like, do I really have to wait? But sometimes you just do, There's things that are set out to be timed in a certain way and to be structured a certain way that we don't decide, and we can't change it, and we can't try to have it be something that it's not supposed to be. So, yeah. Better at times, in all ways that could be. I mean, and there's a lot of them. So for me personally, in this moment right now and last night, and I've been realizing this as it's been happening, I feel like there has been times, just speaking out of personal experience on just one thing that's going on in my personal case, I feel like I've been much better at guitars, as playing guitar than I am now at certain other times in my past. And then just, it gives you the potential to start questioning things, and we don't need to, as far as like, well, is there something I'm not doing right then? Or is this just really how it's supposed to be right now? A test of faith. A lot of times things are just tests, dude. And that's something that I'm so grateful for, but also like, it's hard. Yeah. It's hard, dude. It's hard to be patient, It is. Well, and things like that too. I was just thinking, like, the articulation within my speech, because I've talked about within past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and just, In the Image Clothing Company as a whole, on just the sides that I've talked about it in, that I can articulate my words so much better now than I ever could in the past. And it's because speaking is just a physical function the body's doing, and getting my body in the position to speak well, how it's designed to, but then like, in more recent times than those times that I was mentioning those things, I feel like there's, certain times when I can't quite articulate my words as well without like almost trying to. I don't want to try to articulate my words and sound like I'm trying to over enunciate things, like, and so then it's a similar thing to the guitar. It's like I start questioning, like, oh, well, am I doing something wrong? Or is it just like a time period that I'm kind of waiting through, Is there some kind of reason to it? There always is reasons for everything. So we just got to be okay with just being faithful when things don't make sense, because that's when they're actually the best. So, yeah. Yeah. It hurts. Just knowing how unworthy I am, and just seeing that I'm still getting blessed. It's weird. But it is what it is, dude. I didn't design it. I can't decide it, right? That episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I mean, our God has a grand design and a grand scheme, if you will, but not in any kind of negative way. Sometimes the word scheme we think of, in other ways, but yeah, we can't be in charge of anything, and we're just not. So it's humbling. It's really humbling, dude. It's really humbling. I really do, though, love to be shown how wrong I am when I am. I really, really do. So no matter what I'm expecting at any time, it usually ends up just being like a wait for just a little while. All right, cool. We'll try. Probably won't do it so willingly. Probably come at it with a lot of complaints, but I'm trying not to. And I'm trying to lessen the complaints that I have each time that I feel like I'm just about there, and then it feels like my flight got delayed. Like, right. You're walking up to the terminal, and all of a sudden there's a terminal downpour of snow that the plane can't fly through, like, safely, right? Like, oh, right. I mean, yeah, that's how it feels a lot of the time, dude. And cool. Show me how wrong I am, Father. Please. Because you are perfect. You're the creator of all things, and I'm just one of them. So humble me, please. Because I know I'm prideful. So there we go. Dude, yeah. I get caught up on things I don't need to, bro. Start to almost speak about stuff that doesn't matter. Start to almost complain about things that are actually a blessing, and I think it's like something that's in my way. We're better at times at understanding what our God is doing, but, he's always doing new things. So, the only constant is change, right? That's the one kind of change I do like. I'm not so into the currency, I don't care about money at all. I want to go live in the woods somewhere, dude. I'll keep making podcast episodes probably, but I'll just be sitting in my cabin. Yeah, I've got a lot of complaints sometimes, man. I really do. But they're like, hear this correct, because I'm not trying to like justify things, but they're justified complaints in ways like that. For example, like, I just want to be out of the world. I want to go dwell with my God's creations and nature, and not have to go outside in a traffic jam. Just hike everywhere I need to on the nature that's there underneath the man-made concrete, that is in the societies that we have. And so it's complaints like that where it's justified. It's really, truly, because the way that it's supposed to be is natural. But then, again, things are prophesied. The world's how it's meant to be, regardless of whatever. But sometimes we're just better at things than others, dude. Oh, man. And you can tell. I mean, at least you've got the potential to. It's just coming through me, obviously, is what I'm saying. Whether you really can pick up on it or not, I guess that's on your end. But what I'm saying about this, like, level of absolute contentment, but also, like, I feel like I gotta be doing something. Like, I'm so chill right now, authentically. I mean, it's I feel really good, but it's a conflicted, like, feeling, just because I know how much is going on. I know how long I haven't had any kind of money, and I know that I'm in a situation where I've got a lot of privileges that a lot of people don't ever get in their whole life, and I'm not taking advantage of them in any way. And I know that only through prayer and the conviction that I get. And I know that only through what's happening, regardless of if I feel like I'm doing enough or not, you know. And I know that in a deep rooted way to where it just is what it is, but at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, I know I don't deserve it. That's another thing I know. And so, you know, I mean, I'm living in this house. I haven't paid rent where I currently live the entire time I've lived here. It's been 2.5 years plus, you know, 3 years probably now. I mean, it's been a while, dude. I'm 25 years old, you know, and I've talked about this stuff within the podcast, in the Image Clothing Company podcast, where I confess my sins. Truly. That's really what it is. Among other things, that's what I do here. So, you know, I get it, and I understand, and so it's like, it's this conflicted, like, yeah, I mean, I've got contentment, not just because I'm content because I'm being taken care of and I don't have to go do things, and so that's nice. Not that kind of contentment, because that's the part about it that I'm not content about, because I know that there's more I could do, but I'm content because I know that my God is guiding my path when I feel like it should be different, and I feel like I should be doing more, but I know that I shouldn't right now. Hear that how you will, but that's what I'm battling with myself. So if you got a battle with trying to be like, how does that make sense? Well, I don't have an answer for you right now. So that's why this episode is here. As real as it gets. In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 72. Better at times. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm just so grateful, dude. I mean, regardless. I mean, I don't know why I say this so often. I mean, I guess I do, because I'm prompted to, but just meaning, like, I get how this is almost, like, irrelevant a lot of times when I say it, but even if I were to spend the rest of my life in a prison cell, I'm just so grateful. I mean, there's no reason I'd go to prison. Like, well, I mean, can't speak for down the road, who knows, you know, I don't know, something crazy ends up happening, and I steal somebody's, like, bedazzled, something out of their something, right? Just something random. Who knows? I just mean, like, I know God, dude, and that's it. That's all that matters. But within that, it comes with a lot of, like, stuff that I don't know how to navigate, because I'm just a kid. No matter how old I am, I'm a son of my living God, and here I am, feeling like at certain times I was better. But who cares? Right? Oh, gosh. So, there we go. It's the 28th of February, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Last two words in our name will be something that makes a little bit more sense than it already does, because it makes sense, whether this would ever be the case or not. But we will when we do have clothing available, made out of 100% natural materials. The body's natural, so it'll mesh with those, right? Everything I'm wearing now, well, I mean, give or take, but, you know, I'm just very intentional. Like my pants, my 2 shirts, my boots, mostly, you know, and, right, I mean, I'm intentional, and that's what we need to be, is intentional, not perfect. But it's all, you know, cotton, 100% natural. My boots are leather, you know, like, I'm just saying that just because I'm speaking out of example, and that's for context, right? When I say just because it's the case, and nobody could deny it because there's visual proof of it, and my body's just different than it was, it's because of clothing. I mean, really, it's because of Jesus Christ, but right, he's shown me how to allow it to happen, is what I mean, and physically, it's because of clothing. So staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work, as we say, is what our clothing, in the Image Clothing Company clothing, will do. Just get it in your size. Oversized clothing is damaging. So anyway, thank you.